We are officially in for IG Live with Kevin E. And this is No Consequences. Now, right off the bat, let me say it right off the bat, everybody. This conversation is likely to annoy you. I'm just going to say it ahead of time because I've been doing this conversation for a long, long time. Hey, Miss Warren. And I can tell you 100% that there's a part of this that aggravates us. I get it. Totally get it. Understand it. No stress. All right? This is not about trying to annoy you, but it is about trying to clarify a couple of things. Because for 3+ decades, I have been using this Kevinism, as I called them from the Actors Network, over and over and over again. Why? Because it's true. You can't get fired from a job you don't have. Now, I'd love to believe that Alana knows it's coming. I'd love to believe that all of us, are trust fund kids, which I know I'm not. So if you are, that's great. Again, this is one of those things that comes with absolutely no judgment. This is not about judgment at all. This is about your mental state of being. I'm doing a whole sort of series of these for the next handful about how you think about this profession, okay? You simply can't get fired from a job you don't have. But here's my other question. If you need to write this down, write it down. Even though this will be on the grid for a couple of weeks, write it down. Here's my question to you regarding the business, not regarding going to acting class. I'm almost never, unless you see a title that I'm discussing acting class, or unless you see a title that I'm actually discussing the craft in the audition room, I'm always talking about business. The business side, the administrative side, the left brain side, the crap we can't stand. Because we can't stand it. Hey, Rico, great to see you, man. The bottom line is, what if there were a set of things that you had to do every single week or every single month, and if not, you lost the right to be an actor? I'm not talking about real death. I'm talking about actor death. Write that down. See, the cops are coming to get me right now. This is my premise of No Consequences. The antithesis of that, you guys, in a certain way, is what I've said for years. And it doesn't matter, again, doesn't matter if you're in Miami, Nashville, Atlanta, Dallas, Boston, Chicago, New York, Melbourne, Sydney, London, Paris. If you're just, don't get pissed off. If you're just breathing with a headshot and in acting class, there's a strong, not omnipotent, not 100%, but there is a higher than likely reality that you might not ever make any money at this profession if that's what you want to do. Because within 50 miles of where I'm sitting right now in Studio City, California, there are approximately 150,000 to 200,000 people who technically are breathing with a headshot. And or, I would say, if you just look at the numbers on casting networks and on Casting Frontier and on back, there are 200,000 people who call themselves an actor. And yes, they muck up the works for all of us. And if there was some sort of way that you would lose your actor card, not your SAG-AFTRA card, not your union card, your actor card, for not doing anything, I guarantee you, not all those 200,000, but a whole bunch more of them would do shit like what I talk about. This is part of what I'm saying with regards to you can't get fired from a job you don't have. And most of us, even people who work a lot, work and are unemployed. So this is a constant cyclical thing. This is part of what this profession is, until the place that you've done enough jobs, and I'm talking about huge jobs, where you're an offer-only person. It doesn't mean you have to be an A+, A-list person. There are tons of A and A- and B+ actors that are offer-only. That's totally cool. Hey, Jose, good to see you, man. That's totally cool. It's fine. But what we're ultimately discussing, you guys, and I mean, how many actors have I known in my life? How many of you know? How many self-help, self-motivation, self-discipline books have you freaking read? How many mantras on Post-its and stickies do you have around your house? Yet, They're typically about life. They're not about what you're doing on a weekly basis to pursue your profession, because you can't get fired from a job you don't have. If you're not a trust fund kid, we all tend to find a way to scratch out paying the bills. And or I should add to that, if you happen to be in an association, which again, I don't have any issue with. This is not about judgment, you guys. If you're married and somebody is the 98% breadwinner, good for you. Even more of a reason to not have the excuse of not doing something. Hey, Teresa, great to see you. So understand, you guys, that we do all sorts of life mantras about your state of being and self-motivation, and don't hold back on all this stuff. But we tend in this profession to always push that towards just the craft part of this profession, just the show part. And be clear, I've had to say this over and over again in my life on the subject of the business of show business. I am never diminishing the value of being an exceptionally good actor. Don't ever think I am. Ever. Good to see you too, love. Ever. I would not have the resume that I have in the category that I'm in, with no nepotism, no family, no one in this profession, not being particularly gorgeous and not being particularly overtly character. I would not have a job in this business ever if I didn't believe in being exceptionally good at being in the room doing the work, or on set doing the work. You can't get hired. Now, 30 years ago, it was a little different if you were a person of color, or maybe somebody who was an extreme character or extremely gorgeous. You didn't have to be as good. But today, because of digital technology over the last 22 years since the turn of the 21st century, some of that has diminished vastly. And it's even harder for me now to get it. I just finished reading for a half-hour series regular on a pilot for NBC. I just finished reading for a limited series for Chippendale's history, and I just read for a Dennis Quaid film 2 days ago. Now, it's highly likely, based on me looking at my face and those characters, aside from my lack of half-hour series regular stuff on my resume, that I probably won't get any of those jobs. But that's not the point, y'all. I wouldn't keep getting those auditions if I did a lousy job. So I don't want anybody to ever think, or even an average job, as the craft part, show part. I'm never diminishing that. But I'm telling you, you can't get fired from a job you don't have. And if you could lose your actor card for not doing anything on a weekly basis towards the pursuit of this profession for real, not just breathing with a headshot, then 90-some% of actors would lose their actor card. So this is the reason why years ago I came up with no consequences. We are the masters of our schedule when it comes to this stuff, you guys. We just are. And here's the challenge. And I'd love to see a thumbs up, or I'd love to see a love heart thing go by for everybody that this falls into. One of the biggest challenges we have about this subject is we all freaking know an actor who doesn't have to do shit. We all know somebody who just showed up wherever you are. They got some pictures made. They went to a class or two, and they got a representative who just gets them out all the time, and they haven't ever had to do chapter 1 of Kevin's freaking book. This is part of the challenge. Part of the challenge is we tend to know somebody by one direct or one degree of separation that seems to not really have to care much about business proactivity, and yet they still have regular, legit actor activity. Don't forget that phrase I just said, because that's part of the consternation. I'm just going to continue holding the coffee cup because I can't stop talking. That's the problem for us. We all know someone who doesn't have to do the stuff I talk about, or at least we think they don't. So what happens in that conversation for us is, if you've been doing this for a while, and all the people in this live today have been doing this for a while, this leads to either a form of judgment, anger, bitterness, or cynicism. Take your pick. I don't care. But that's what it tends to do to us, because, and see, Thanks, Murray. I appreciate it. And that's part of the thing for us is this is why the business is 50% mental psychology philosophy and it's 50% doing shit. That's why my book is done the way it's done, based on the 7 deadly sins, and that's why I speak the way that I speak. We are constantly challenged by our own state of mind. And No Consequences is 100% a self-discipline, self-motivation challenge. It is. Why? Well, there's probably 2 or 3 basic reasons. 1, we know people who don't do it. 2, there's no guarantee of return on your investment in time. And number 3, we are commonly, which is coming up, either confused about how and or concerned that we won't do it right. So we have tons of reasons why we don't do stuff to pursue our career, and I mean really pursue. So if you're new to listening to me on IG Live, if you weren't a member of the Actors Network, then go over to YouTube, go to the second playlist, which is IG Live, and go back to the beginning and watch my setup versus pursuit, because that's what I mean by pursuit. And so it's a constant challenge. It just, I don't want you to get bitter and cynical. I also don't want you to bite off more than you can chew. This also leads to us shutting down, and we don't have any consequences for shutting down towards the business. No one's coming to your door to knock on it, men in black. I'm wearing black today, who knew? And take your actor card away. It's not happening. We can just bump along breathing with a headshot. I don't want to see you do that. And underneath all of this, especially today, this was not nearly the case when I started. If you were someone who wasn't a sort of standard Caucasian male female, but even more so today than ever, all of you guys need to stop and think, I am perfectly right for things I want to go after. You may not be right at that moment, but you're perfectly right to go up for that job. Okay? Perfectly right. That's why you have to look at casting and being hired much more like my dating analogy. It's commonly based on mood, timing, and the moment. I'm kind of right for every single thing I read for, but am I hyper right? That's why you can't worry about pursuing the business with being hired. No. You pursue the business to accomplish 2 things, guys. 2 things. To increase the likelihood, my three phrases, oh my God, I got touchdown Tony Diamond in the house. You pursue this profession to increase the likelihood, those 3 words, and here's another 3, of legit actor activity. That's why you pursue the business. And the other reason you pursue the business is to do what all of us know this profession is based on, which is, well, it's who you know. It's like, no, it's who knows you. It's to add more people to your master contact list. Love you too, man. That's why we pursue this business in a real pursuit way. And if you're not doing it, no, you're not going to see any consequences for not doing it. You're not going to tangibly see them because you can't get fired from a job you don't have. However, as time continues to go by, understand the more you're not actively auditioning, getting job interviews in your field, of any field, but especially this one, the more you're not creating that the community at large, whatever your professional community is, it doesn't matter where you are or where you live. This is a global statement. Every day that goes by that people are not considering you is a day that you in some way get further and further and further and further and further and further and further away from being considered. That's my concern. No Consequences is difficult for us. I'm not going to argue it. It's impossible for me to argue it. It's hard to get up every day or 3 days a week and go after something that is so freaking subjective. Totally get it. But this is why I'm asking you, begging you, to stop looking at it that way. Don't look at your pursuit to be about getting hired or working, because it's not. It's actually, there's a chapter in my book called To Be a Professional. It's about being viewed in your community in a certain way. And what it ultimately comes down to, since I have this Oscar book right behind me, is the phrase that all those years ago made the Oscars what they are. For your consideration. That's what it is. All we want as actors who want to get paid for this shit is to be considered. Now, to be considered doesn't mean you get an audition. It means you were considered for one of the audition employee interview slots. When you get an audition, I've been saying this for 3 decades, to me, personally, every single time I get an audition, I already won. And I already won because exactly what I just said. That means the marketplace that I'm in, which happens to be the hardest one in the world, Los Angeles. Even though I'm my age, I'm my type, and I'm not a star. In my own mind I am, but that's okay. I'm not a star. That what I have done, the career that I have built, the resume that I have built, doesn't mean shit. It doesn't. Not today. If I don't keep performing and if I don't keep making people in my world aware, I'm still here. You have to recognize, you guys, this is why we can't get into a place of martyrdom and get in a place to self-pity about being an actor. Because you have to understand, people quit this business every day. People pass away at all ages. They don't know you're necessarily still here, still studying, still sharp, still ready to go if you never remind them you're still here. And the problem is there's no promise of return on investment and there's no consequence in any way, shape, form, or fashion for not doing any of it. And that is a nasty combination. But it's true. It's true. So I've said to people, again, at some point I will cover Actor Pie. I've said to people over and over again, and Alana knows this conversation all too well, you need to identify how many hours you have to actually pursue your career beyond, thanks Jose, beyond just pointing and clicking. I'm not talking about doing electronic submissions. Yes, it could be defined as pursuing, agreed. But because it is so common and it is such a literally daily effort by 130,000 of those people, it becomes part of the malaise, and that's the concern. So I don't care how much time you have. When you're younger, maybe don't have a spouse or kids. When you're older, even if you don't have a spouse and kids, my life is extraordinarily busy by choice. But whatever time you can carve out, identify 1 or 2 or 3 things beyond clicking that you can actively do to be increasing the number of people in your marketplace that actually know you exist as a product for sale. Because no, you're not going to see a visible consequence for not doing that. It's not going to happen. No one's going to come, visit you at night and go, shake their finger at you and, some hologram. It's not going to happen. No one's going to bug you about it, man. Trust me. It's not coming. So you have got to find a way to make sure you are diligent with picking a couple of, I don't care if it's researching a particular breakdown you did click on and going 2 steps further. I don't care if it's spending research time on IMDb Pro to identify 3 or 4 agencies or managers that might be in need of your type. I don't care what you're doing to pursue further. But we cannot in this profession only be result oriented. You just can't be, man. And when we're too result oriented, that is what stops us from actually doing it. I mean, Woody, guys, sorry, I have a gentleman here who knows me purely from the golf standpoint, but we laughed about this in terms of amateur golfers being irritated, right, Woodburn? Being irritated, they didn't make a 17-foot putt. And yet, Woody could actually type into this screen right now and tell you what percentage of professionals make a 17-foot putt? Now, it's not about making the putt or not. This is my point. It's an exact analogy to this sport. It's not about that. It's about the fact that you're on the green in that position having that putt, because most don't make it. But what happens to your mind when the amateur doesn't make it? If the amateur gets pissed off and aggravated and irritated, well, it's the same thing as being a cynic as an actor. It's the exact same thing. This is completely transcendent and transferable. Because the state of your mind going to the next tee is likely to compound and affect that next shot. And that's exactly what happens to us, you guys. Because I watched this. You have to understand, I watched this for almost 24 years in the network. I would speak on something, people get very excited, and go, oh, I'm going to go do that shit, yeah. And they do it for a couple of weeks, tops. Right, Alana? Right, Jose? Couple of weeks. And when all of a sudden the whole town wasn't clamoring for them, this was the response. Well, that doesn't work. You're probably not going to lose 50 pounds and get in amazing shape in 2 weeks. Guys, life is a process. Life is a partial information game. Pursuing your career is a process, and the results of an acting career is a partial information game. I mean, it is what it is. That's just how this shit goes. Hey, Iman. Now, Aman, just know that this will be on my Instagram grid for 2 weeks, and then it moves over to my YouTube channel, same address, the Kevin E, because I'm closing in on towards the end of this, and I definitely would want you to see all of that. So make sure you watch the whole thing on the grid. Yeah, I mean, it's a great phrase, Woodburn. I hope that should be in the forward of your golf book. Desperation for the outcome versus passion for the process. Absolutely. And this is part of the challenge, is that it's hard to be passionate for the process of pursuing an acting career because of what I already said. There's just no guarantee. There's no immediate visual. And sometimes there is. This is also part of the problem. I mean, I know this, Alana, from you, from Jose, but I know people who would come to a topical discussion that just happened to be timed at the moment when them going someplace out to an industry event, and then they put into practice something that I said, and it had a positive outcome in the span of 72 hours. Yes, it happens. It just doesn't happen every time. This is not a guaranteed profession, y'all. But because there's no consequence to the fact that it's not a guaranteed profession, if all you do is just slowly, which is the antithesis of the statement, slowly rack focus back into the background and never do anything, then it's going to be a challenge. I mean, you have to put yourself in the position of a representative, okay? I'll kind of wrap up with this. Put yourself in the other folks' chair that we want, to your point, Woodburn, to your point, that we want to be passionate about us as clients and get up every day and bust their ass to represent us, right? And yet, outside of being in class, you're not on a team basis helping them help you help your both. I wonder where that mantra came from. And yes, it was long before the movie Jerry Maguire. That was the credo of the Actors Network that I created in 1990 freaking 2. So understand that you're a part of this equation. And if all you do is just have a hands-off, well, I'm in class and I have pictures and I have my shit correct online and I have a representative, I'm done. Like, okay. And as I say and have been saying for 3+ decades, if that statement I just made actually works for you and you are auditioning consistently and regularly your entire career by simply updating your pictures, putting them online, chatting with your representative 2 or 3 times a year, and you are just auditioning like crazy town and never have to do anything else, yay for you. Would anybody like to type in what percentage of people who are not stars or offer only that is the case for? Because it's going to start with a point, and there's going to be about 4 zeros and a 1. Yes, Alana, we all wish. I wish. That wasn't the case for me. I didn't get a great agent when I first came to LA, And I still wouldn't say that I've never had a monster up of 0.2. Oh, hell no. 0.02. You got to put a 0 in front of the 2, love. I mean, it's just not very many people ever. So there's some degree of effort and consistent effort that you have to make towards a pursuit. And I get the fact that there's no consequence. Yeah, Sheeta, I mean, certainly early on, especially when you're starting a career through the electronic process that we have, 100%, well, not 100% that most of your auditions will be things yourself. You guys can't imagine the number of checks that I wrote to my representatives way back, let's just say in the first 10 we believe in serve humanity with our talent. Yeah. Can't give up. I'm still here, man. Yes, I understand, Sheeta. Absolutely. And what I'm sharing with you, Sheeta, also is I probably wrote 10 or 15 checks on credits that I procured the audition myself to my representative, who had nothing to do with procuring the audition, because that's how you do proper business. Doesn't matter how you get the audition. That's why I talk about happenstance in 3 avenues. Because the bottom line is, if you have a representative and you get a job interview, I don't care whether they had anything to do with it or not, they still get paid. And I wrote easily 10, 15 checks on 10 or 15 credits they had nothing to do with. Well, I wouldn't have had them if I didn't do what I did. So my overall point is, you can be frustrated at it. You can cross your arms and go, okay, that's cool. And that's exactly how you see the previous IG Live that I did, topical discussion I have called Hobby versus Money. And if you do that, and if you're just breathing with a headshot and you do occasional electronic submissions, it's totally cool. Again, it's not a judgment, it's a statement of fact. This is the problem with our political landscape here and the world, is we make every single statement that's a fact somehow political. No, this is not a political statement metaphorically. That's just a fact. That's a hobby. If you have pictures and you occasionally point and click, that's just a hobby, y'all. And that's completely cool. Completely cool. I got to write that check. Nice, Teresa. Yeah, I mean, that's part of what happens is, listen, I'll finish up on this. Most people know that the TV show SWAT, people who've listened to me would know. People who haven't listened to me wouldn't know this. But the showrunner of that show is a pretty good friend of mine. And I've read for the show. I still haven't booked it. I've read for it several times. But while my manager, I know, has submitted me for the show, the bottom line is when I finally book that show, which I'm going to do next season, which will likely be their last season, it will mainly be because of a relationship that I've been building since freaking 2005. But my manager still gets paid. But I also still do little pieces of maintenance on a regular basis to keep that professional relationship alive. I don't just take it for granted, whoopsie poop, that because we've known each other for so long, and I know that we are very friendly and professional friends, as I like to call it, I still have to, once in a while, engage. Because there's too many of us to not. And while there doesn't at the moment appear to be fruition to that, that's to your point, Woody, that, passion for the process. My acting coach always said, concern yourself with the effort and the result will take care of itself. Now that was a craft statement. You can't think about, I have to cry now. Okay, that doesn't work. From an instrument standpoint, you just have to function from the place of what the character is trying to accomplish and what they need and feel, and let your body take care of the rest. But when it comes to the business, you do have to be proactive about this, guys, and you have to find the couple of 2 or 3 things that you really dig doing, and just do them and don't stop. Great to see. Look, there we go. We got Liza knows Teresa. See what I'm talking about? This is like the Actors Network all over again. Okay, guys, we're closing in on the very end of 30 minutes. As you know, I like to keep this tight for your schedule, etc. Thank you for being here. I know it's not a fun subject, but please, by all means, really, really take it into consideration. Really understand you kind of have to do this at least 50 weeks out of the year. I'll give you 2 to take off, but do 2 or 3 things a week. Simple things that really actually pursue your career and keep you constantly, plausibly creating actor activity or increasing the number of people who are aware of you in your marketplace who can then consider you. Okay? I look forward. Thank you, Liza. I appreciate it. I look forward to the fact that you guys now can even talk further and hook up with each other. That's great. Thanks, y'all, for being here. I will see you on Friday at 9 a.m. It's a good one. Have a great hump day, you guys. Bye-bye.